Erica.
Hi. Hi, Dawn.
So we're gonna start off with just getting some information about you, like where you work, the population you serve, and like where you work.
Okay. You want me to answer all of that?
Yeah.
I'm Erica Garcia. I'm an early intervention social worker. I work at Russell Child Development Center. We serve children ages 0 to 3 and their families who the children might have like a disability or a developmental delay of some sort in one or at least one area of development. They've got to meet a delay of 20%. And then there's also a list of auto eligible clients. So even if they're not showing delays in their development, if they have a certain diagnosis, they are auto eligible to receive our services that take place in the home. They're free and voluntary to families. We just go to the home and give strategies to support the child's development and to help them reach their milestones.
Okay. So what are the roles and expectations performed like by the social worker?
My role as a social worker here, I do have to know all areas of development, like all developmental domains. I need to know a brief overview of that and what the expectations are at each age level. But my area of expertise is social and emotional development, and also parent education and providing parents with supports that they may need in their parenting their child with a disability or a developmental delay or any type of behavioral issues that might be going on. I want to say that I'm not afraid to touch on those subjects,
Mm-hmm.
like other professionals might be, or other
Mm-hmm.
disciplines. So I really meet the family where they're at, make sure that the parent is getting what they need to then give their child what they need.
Okay. So what kind of interactions do you have with other disciplines in your work?
So we do a lot of joint visits. So for example, if I have a child, it's working.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a child who, behavior is the main concern.
Mm-hmm.
So I am the primary service provider. I'm the one who goes to the home most often. But he also has some motor concerns such as low muscle tone or just a different diagnosis that
Mm-hmm.
affects their movement. Then I will invite an occupational therapist or a physical therapist to join me on some visits
Mm-hmm.
to coach me through some of those concerns and how I can start growing my base of knowledge to help the family while I'm in the home, the majority of the time.
Okay.
We do a lot of joint visits with different disciplines.
Okay. So what are their roles when they go into the home?
As primary service providers or as joint visitors?
As joint visitors.
As joint visitors, their role is, again, to coach me,
Mm-hmm.
to coach the families on specific strategies, or to even just come as a consultant,
Okay.
They could help us understand if there is a need for concern
Mm-hmm.
or if all is well with the concerns that were brought up,
Mm-hmm.
and their role is not to keep coming.
Okay.
The purpose of our primary coaching model is for one person to be in the home the majority of the time. Joint visitor comes in just as a supplemental resource.
Okay. Are there any professional values or ethical differences that you experience that cause maybe some conflict?
Within,
I would say within like you and other disciplines.
I wouldn't say anything. There's no major conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we all have different perspectives when it comes to working with families and with individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we collaborate really well,
Mm-hmm.
and we understand each other's point of views when we're teaming about the family.
Okay. how do you incorporate diversity, inclusion within your practice?
So, I mean, I try as a professional to treat all families the same and going in with an open mind and non-judgmental perspective and giving them the benefit of the doubt, you know, using the strength-based model, believing that every individual is trying to do their best, you know, that they all have strengths, they all have good things to offer. And so that's how, you know, in diverse communities, you might see differences in your work, but just to be aware of what those differences are, those feelings that might come about when you meet these families, like just being very aware of that and regulating yourself to still practice the way you want to practice.
Okay.
By treating everyone the same.
And then how do you feel like your organization addresses problems related to like diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I think our agency does really well in trying to recruit people from different cultures, different communities. And when there's a language barrier of some sort, we have Spanish-speaking interpreters that will go into the home for those who only speak Spanish. We have Quiche. We have different interpreters in the community that will join us if we have families who only speak Vietnamese or Burmese, you know, things like that. But if we don't find an interpreter, which is best that way, if we do, we use the appropriate language line to help meet those families in their homes with the language that they know best.
And what's your perspective regarding diversity, equity, oppression, and the impact it has on people's health, like general health?
When I hear the word diverse, I think it's any community that doesn't speak English or Spanish. I think that's the diversity in our community, which makes it great, but also it impacts how they access resources, because maybe they don't want to go and get help because what if there's no one there to assist them to connect with those resources that they need. And there's just some embarrassment behind it, or just unsure or unknown about what's available to them. So I feel like that impacts our community when we have families who don't access the resources because of the language barrier.
And do you think oppression impacts their health in general?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, because if they're not getting to those resources for one reason or another, they're not meeting the needs.
How about taking all of that into account? What's your perspective on how diversity and oppression impacts mental health, our clients' mental health?
How diversity and oppression impacts their mental health. Again, they're not accessing the resources that they may need. They may not understand it fully to get the help that they need, and so they're having to cope or find ways to cope within their home, within their own knowledge on how to handle certain mental illnesses, and that's not always the best thing, you know, the best coping mechanism, and that can definitely affect the mental health of the individual as well as the people surrounded by that individual.
Can you talk a little bit about the use of technology in your work?
So when we enroll a family or when we go do intake, it is all paper based.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of paperwork involved. And then we input at least the individual family service plan onto an online database. That's pretty
Mhm.
much the only online paper trail that we have
Mm-hmm.
in our agency that we really reference. But also we do our documentation online as well, just a Microsoft Word document. So that's where we're lacking as well, where we don't have an electronic based system
Mm-hmm.
to document our logs or our home visits and stuff. So technology is a big part of what we do to a certain extent. I personally don't like taking my laptop into the homes because there's just so much going on, and the children and gravitate towards it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's better just to go paperless or electronic-less
Mm-hmm.
or just take notes on a notepad and then come back to the office and use my laptop to document whatever I need. I know we've started to use like a telemed type thing
Mm-hmm.
with the speech therapists.
Mhm.
They're the only ones allowed to do like a consultation over FaceTime or
Oh, okay.
Zoom
Mm-hmm.
and bill for that.
Oh, okay.
So I know a couple of them have tried it already, and it's not the best practice, but it's sometimes necessary whenever we're trying to cover 13 counties.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough days in the week where transportation or
Mhm.
whatnot, gets in the way. So having access to a speech therapist, like the family in Elkhart, who I know about, and the evaluation needed to be done with the speech therapist.
Mm-hmm.
The speech therapist wasn't able to make it for whatever reason, but she was able to Zoom in and kind of observe
Mm-hmm.
via video what the child was doing, what he was
Okay.
saying, and
Mm-hmm.
she was also prompting she was a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
She was prompting the other discipline or the other professional on what to do and how to interact with the child to get more out of him, or to kind of observe more,
Mm-hmm.
to really get a good idea where he's at developmentally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it worked out well.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it did. Can you discuss a little bit about your perspective on how research, funding, and legislation informs and impacts the work that you do?
Obviously, I'm really not good at advocating and for policy change or any of that stuff, but it is definitely something we need to be informed about, like who is representing us at
Uh-huh.
the state level, and how are they representing us, and trying to email our representatives or our legislators whenever possible, to kind of just advocate for what's best for early childhood programs and stuff. I think we have a good leadership team here at Russell Child Development Center that does that for
Yeah.
us, that advocates for our programs, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to have research to back up what we're saying
Yeah.
and our mission and stuff, and for grant funding as well.
Yeah, that definitely does. So, like, looking back, what would you have wished you knew in your work, like, before you came here, that's related to interdisciplinary teams and practice?
What I wish I would have known.
Yeah.
Really, I can't think of anything. I feel like that there's beauty in that, coming in, not knowing,
That's true, yeah.
and just forming my own opinion, and just learning as I go, and I really didn't find it challenging to the point where I wish I knew something beforehand. Everyone here has been very supportive and has shared their ideas, their opinions, their knowledge, and have really given me the information that I need to do what I'm here to do.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
All right. Can you tell me your name?
Laura Bridgemeyer.
Tell me a little bit about where the agency you work and the population you serve.
I work for Russell Child Development Center, and we serve several different populations. The most common in Southwest Kansas is immigrants and Hispanic. So that would probably be our majority of our population that we work with.
What is your setting like? Like, where do you do your work at?
We do our work in homes, so we do in-home visiting we go to anyone's homes, and then office work is in our building. So.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit about what your understanding is of the roles of a social worker?
My understanding of the roles of a social worker are that they are there for the families and they are a good resource for them in finding help with home life, doctors. I think they do it all with families. I've never been with a social worker, so that's just kind of my understanding of them.
Okay. Can you discuss a little bit about what your experience has been like working with the social worker, like on a team?
On a team with a social worker, I have not personally done yet. I did shadow this summer a social worker, and they were working with the family to find a home, an apartment. They teamed up with a nurse so that they could do some developmental checks with the kids, and I think they were also working with St. Francis with the family, kind of being an in-between the two.
Okay. Do you have you experienced any like differing professional values or ethical differences between like you and other disciplines?
I wouldn't say so yet. Like I said, I've only been doing this job for a month, but I don't think ethically, at least within the disciplines at Russell Child Development Center, that we're very different. I think we all kind of have the same morals and ethics around here. I have noticed a little bit of a difference between companies. We work a lot with St. Francis around here, and I would say they just do things differently, and I don't necessarily want to put an ethical view on that, but
Okay.
could cross boundaries there.
How do you incorporate diversity inclusion within your practice?
I almost feel like it comes naturally. Growing up in Garden City with this ethnicity, I really don't think twice about inclusion or treating them any differently.
Okay.
Just because that's how I've been raised. I do have to try a little bit harder communication. If they do speak Spanish or something, I have to be inclusive with the materials provided. Make sure they're have Spanish written on them so that they can read them. With translators, and that is probably the biggest obstacle.
Okay. And what's your perspective on how the organization of Russell addresses issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I think Russell's probably, I have a lot of pride in Russell now that I work here too. They include everyone, and we don't turn down anybody. We don't close any doors for anyone. We have so many disciplines that we can offer to everyone. And I think we do that because we are funded, and so everything that we provide is free. So it's pretty easy for us to say yes to everyone, and I don't feel like anyone is absent to our program.
Can you kind of explain more like all the disciplines that Russell has within its organization?
Yes, here at Russell we have Healthy Step providers. They do developmental checks from 0 to 3-year-olds. We have Triple P. They do parenting classes in home with families, that self-referral or doctor referral, any of that. We have targeted case managers. They help apply for Social Security income, basically a lot of the paperwork that families need help with. We have
Mhm.
nurses who do vision and eye checks. We have occupational therapists. We have social workers. Um, yeah, we kind of have a little bit of everything here.
Sounds like it. Can you talk a little bit about how diversity and oppression can impact clients' health?
Diversity, impression, their health.
Mm-hmm. Like overall health.
Um,
Do you think maybe like access to services, or for example, you say you work a
oh,
lot with the Hispanic family. Do you see how maybe their health is impacted because of their barriers?
yes. Okay, I understand the question now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do think there's a big gap there. Sometimes they can't get state funding or like state insurance or whatever, so they lack a lot of like healthcare with doctors.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder for them to communicate with them and find specialties. I've noticed sometimes like we need to refer someone to a specialist in Kansas City or Wichita, and that's a lot harder to do when they don't have
Mm-hmm.
insurance or um, don't have the means of getting to those places, like money to even travel there.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm glad that Russell has targeted case managers that work with insurance companies to do that. But I would say there is a barrier there, and that's kind of a hard struggle that I have yet to experience working here, but I have witnessed.
Okay. So, how do you think diversity, equity, and oppression impacts your clients' mental health?
I think it's damaging. I think they feel like it's impossible or they don't know the appropriate resources to look out to
Mm-hmm.
in order to find that help. I think most of the people that I've come across are almost like helpless. They don't feel like they can do anything for their kids or family, or and that can be mentally pretty damaging.
Okay. Um, can you talk a little bit about the use of technology in your work?
I don't feel like we use a lot of technology. We pretty much go in and use whatever the families have, or we bring like books or toys and stuff. But as far as like technology, we just do our notes online and enter our data online. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that,
What's your perspective on how research, funding, and legislation can inform and impact the work that you do?
this is huge for us in our workplace because we
Mm-hmm.
are state funded. We get grant money we apply for a grant every year from the Children's Cabinet, and that is what gives us the access to work with all these families because we get to provide free services. We provide a lot of free things. We give car seats to those who need pack and plays, toys, and so I think that is a huge part of what we do. Without it,
Mm-hmm.
we would not be able to function, nor reach the cultures and diversities that we have, um, or even the low economics without that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about what do you wish you would have known coming into this work related to like working with other disciplines?
I wish I feel very lucky that I've got to job shadow everyone and have an internship here before I actually started working here because I did get to do all the disciplines and
Mm-hmm.
watch them and kind of see what all that we have to offer here. And so I feel very lucky that I know what we can offer and kind of forgot the second part of that question. It
Well,
was like,
yeah, it's just related to like the different disciplines that you work with, like the different teams.
yeah,
That you
and that
feel
we
like.
can cross over too. So like if a social worker needed like a developmental check, a healthy
Mm-hmm.
steps professional could do that. And if a parenting a triple P provider needed help with a vision check, our nurses could come in. So the fact that we can intercross those disciplines is really neat too.
All right. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Maria, and I just wanted to share my experience that I had during the interview process with Erica Garcia, who is a master social worker, and Laura Richmeyer, who majored in family studies. So when I did these interviews, I figured that there would be a couple differences, but I was kind of fascinated to see what those differences were. For example, Erica was able to go very much in depth of what the different roles that social workers can do. Most people perceive it as child welfare, but she was able to explain how it involves social and emotional development, just overall development, and really the work with interdisciplinary teams. And the home visitation concept was really key in what she was saying. So it's really able to explain how broad the topic of social work is. Whereas Laura, having really been new to just the field in general, only saw social work as somebody who provides access, which is a big role for social workers, but it's not the only thing that social workers do. And it was also really interesting to see how Laura, having only been there for about a month, how she's already seeing oppression and discrimination and equity with these families that she's been serving for a month. I mean, having going into these homes, she's really starting to see a lot of the discrimination that occurs with just practice. So I think that was really important to capture. One of the things that I learned about with Erica that I thought was really important and really key in the social work practice is her talk about how she includes interdisciplinary teams. She talked about going into homes and being the primary coordinator for this family, and also collaborating with uh, PTs, OTs, speech pathologists who have more knowledge of maybe something that the family's struggling with. And she's able to bring these people into the home versus maybe referring them to another clinic or referring them to another home visitor. So Erica talked about how she might bring an occupational therapist, an OT, into the home that shows her and the family the strategies that they could use to help this child, and then the occupational therapist kind of steps out, and Erica will continue to play the role as the primary person. And the reason I think this is really important and how we apply it to social work or just practice in general is that families get really overwhelmed because we tend to refer to so many different places, and then families have to follow through with 6 different people, and then they aren't successful with any of them because it's really overwhelming. Whereas in this scenario, you're bringing people with you to a joint visit. So that kind of, I think, would be really important to incorporate and practice more, to maybe as a holistic team approach this family and provide the services right then and there instead of expecting them to contact 6 different agencies. So I think that was the main key point that I took from the interviews that I did, and I think it's going to really help me in the way that I apply my practice towards people, because I think, especially out here in Southwest Kansas, it can be very difficult with the limitations that exist for families to follow through with 6 different referrals. So thank you.